Let's start. Okay, welcome everyone. Nice to see all of you here. So just off the bat, we're going to be starting off with, how to build up your first AI employee. And we're going to move from, the era of the chatbot to more of the era of the digital worker where we seeing most of the gains right now. And yeah, like I said, this is going to be a presentation more for you. So you're welcome to stop me at any point in time, ask a question, make a comment, tell us what you're working on. And yeah, whatever you want to ask, you can post the questions right there in the chat, and I'll get to each one as soon as I can. I've got the chat window right here ready. So yeah, let's begin. And yeah, if you can have your video on, that'll be great. I can see the smiles on some people. So if something's not right, then I can see, okay, cool, I need to change this up a bit. Anyways, so yeah, my name is Ritesh Ganji, Director of Augmented AI. And my mission essentially is to help as many businesses basically automate as much as we can. And my personal goal is to automate my entire business. As ambitious as it seems right now, it is something in the realm of what we can do in this day, age and time. And what I recommend for a lot of people to do now is, AI is not perfect. It's going to make mistakes. It's going to hallucinate. It's going to be subjected to context rot, whatever it is. But build it now, and you'll get to a point where, you're able to automate 50%. And then eventually you get to a point where you'll be able to go to 60%, 70%, 80%, and then you can push into the 90s. I'm not sure about 100%. It is possible. But as AI advances, you rather build it out now and let it scale eventually. So yeah, I also scaled my business to over 121,000 subscribers. I have over 62,000 followers on LinkedIn. And, we started off about 7 years ago talking about, computer vision, starting off in AI as it became a bit more prominent. And now we're moving towards the generative AI age, and now where things can be done with AI I'll say a bit more reliably than humans. I wouldn't say that it's perfect. It could replace a human, but I'm saying that it can get quite close. I've also done real automation projects. A lot of gurus out there say they can teach you automations, but we are actually practicing automations, and we're building real use cases for companies like Momentum, which is one of the largest financial institutions here in South Africa. And yeah, we did some forms automation and audit for them. Swana University of Technology, we built a offline version of NotebookLM for them. And we also automated the entire video pipeline. They had a deadline of 2 months, but they were only able to deliver it in 6 months, but we managed to deliver this whole thing in 2 weeks. So that was a pretty amazing project that we worked on. So first up, why build an AI employee in the first place? As counterintuitive as it may seem, number one, us as humans, we need to sleep, we need to take breaks, we call sick, and we get tired, we get distracted, we lose focus. And that leads to different types of results, like inconsistent results, inefficient processes, and it's not scalable. So with an AI employee, if done right, you can have it to work 24/7. And right now we're in an age where we constantly have to prompt it to do things. But what if it's in a stage where it comes back to us and say, hey, while you're sleeping, I was able to do X, Y, and Z content for AAA or ABC clients. That's the way we're seeing things going right now. And it brings us to the next part, which is infinite scalability. Now, instead of, if you need a task done, but you need someone who's qualified, it could be an engineer or an accountant. They studied their degree for so many years. So you have a high probability of hiring that person because they have the degree. And that's, you have that some level of accountability as well. But now, after they qualify, everyone has different work experience. So finding the right person for the right job is quite difficult. And that's why having an AI agent that has broad knowledge of everything can be used. You train it up using a standard operating procedure. You train it up like you would do an ordinary employee. We'll go into this a bit more. And then you would be able to scale it up. Once done right, you can scale it up infinitely as much as you want. So you want 1, 2, a million. It all depends on once you are able to get it right. Then cost efficiency, we're talking about, a person's salary versus, maybe a couple of dollars for the AI agent. It could be somewhere in the hundreds of dollars, or maybe for certain applications, advanced applications, you could have it in the thousands, depending on what it's handling. But I'm not saying that we replace humans entirely. Right now, we still need humans to like manage the AI, and we need people to use AI more as a tool or as a colleague that can help, get the task done more reliably, consistently, with less human error, get it done faster. And if you do that, your time to market increases. So it reduces and you're able to produce more as a whole company. So we've seen this evolution of how things were moving from like traditional chatbot. You go into ChatGPT, you say, hey, give me a social media post on this or rewrite this document for me. And that was great. A chatbot can chat, right? Then we went into the realm of the AI agent. Now, the AI agent is able to essentially do more things. So the difference between a chatbot and an agent is that an agent can do, right? You give it tools, it has memory, it can take actions on your behalf, it can surf the web, find things, it can create your PowerPoint slides like how it's done in Copilot and Google Slides or Google Docs, whatever you need. And now coming to the AI employee, can anyone tell me what's the difference between an AI agent and an AI employee? You're more than welcome to unmute yourself. And
so I would guess that an AI agent has a limited scope of operation like a SOP that's very well defined, whereas an employee can start to take and make decisions which an agent can't.
Exactly. Anyone wants to give it a try? Okay, so essentially an AI employee, you can think of, instead of giving it tasks, you'd give it positions like an accountant or an engineer or marketing employee. Wasim says an AI employee can mimic human behavior while agent cannot. Yeah, that's correct. So we're looking more at sort of like workers becoming a bit more autonomous in that regard. And the way you do that, I'm going to be explaining in this workshop. So I would like for you to formally introduce you to my team of AI agents. So I've got Edge, who's my executive assistant. He helps me with, this year got sorted with that one. I had managed to generate this PowerPoint slide for me. But Edge essentially helps me with strategy. So if I want to say, I want to reach this goal of $10,000, $100,000 per month, and I need it to keep me on track. He would come there and say, okay, this is the plan. This is your meetings for today. This is your tasks that you have. These tasks you should not do because, they don't, you should rather give it to someone else rather than you doing it because it doesn't contribute to your main goal. So Edge keeps me accountable, and he can also talk with the rest of the team if need be to communicate certain things. And likewise, the team can communicate back with Edge. I used to call him Dash, but my wife didn't like the name Dash because she knows a Dash at work. So she just, I'll change the name. And then we have Rex, who's the sales and outreach guy. He researches things. Got a message from Faria. I feel we can give more authority or access to personal data and an employee rather than an AI agent. Yes, we can give more authority and access and personal data. An agent can handle multiple tools and multiple access at the same time simultaneously. So that makes a big difference compared to the agent. I'll show you some examples as well in terms of an N8N workflow versus an OpenClaw or Claude Code workflow in just a bit. Yeah, so Rex, I'll show you my Telegram right now. So this is where I have my AI agents. And so Rex, I can ask him, okay, I've got this thing called Dripify. So Dripify essentially is a cold outreach platform where I can search for people doing marketing. Currently, I'm looking for CMOs. And it has a certain campaign that's running that runs automatically. It sends these messages. If you go into this, you'll see the sequence that I'm running, where it starts off with, okay, I'm sending an invite, I endorse their skills, I send them a message on LinkedIn, message. And then what's nice about these AI agents is that you can train them over time. If they get something wrong, you can tell them, look, you did this wrong, remember this for next time. So they can learn, they can grow just like a traditional employee in that sense. And so if we look at Edge over here, so moving on from Edge, we'll go on to Luma. So Luma, she has an interesting job. She helps me with marketing. But I could tell her, generate a whole bunch of content for me and call it a day, But when you're dealing with content, you don't want to be scrolling up all the time, to find where you've worked on a piece of content. Maybe it's a LinkedIn post, maybe it's a hook. whatever it is. You don't want to be doing that all the time. So I've given Luma essentially access to this entire dashboard over here. She's handling a client of mine called Lucid View, and everything that she generates goes through this standard operating procedure over here. But yeah, I'm not going to go too deep into this because we're going to cover it later in this talk. So yeah, she has access to this dashboard. And what's nice about having a dashboard is that you can essentially cooperate with your AI. So I could go into this dashboard and generate images, or Luma can do it. So I can tell her generate 5 images, 5 videos, 2 LinkedIn posts, 2 hooks, and post them all to social media. So that's, you can see the power of having an AI agent compared to just a traditional agent or chatbot. We have Socrates over here that does content social, similar to Luma, but more for my own business. He helps me create posts, schedules them. He has access to uploading videos, so I can send him a picture or image and he'll upload it for me to social media in draft mode. Obviously, I'll review everything. And then we have Amy, who's more like a personal assistant that can help me with a few admin tasks. She's connected to my Notion. So I'll give you an example where we are doing some party planning and Luma essentially can tell me, okay, who's vegetarian, who's gluten intolerant, and she searches the Notion database for our personal plan. She has access, she can create databases, she can create all these things. So giving her access to this tool, we have all of that here. So you can see how many adults are coming, how many people are RSVP'd, how many children versus adults are coming, so that we can book party venues. And she can go and tell people, or she can set up or email people to say, hey, we're looking for a party venue for this many kids or adults, and she can autonomously do those things for me. So, we're living in a great age and time where, for my wife would tell me, now we have this group over here where we have Amy or Amy OpenClaw bot, where my wife can also message her and update this list over here. And yeah, we can collaborate between humans and AI to get things done much more faster than before. Before I continue, are there any questions thus far? Any comments?
Yeah, I already doing. I have some doubts about of the agents. Could you connect the agents through APIs, or maybe these agents are leveraging NAN flows, or what did they connect with these platforms?
Yeah, so with agents, you can decide how much work you'll give them actually. Like with N8N, it's more like deterministic workflows. So if you're doing something that you're going to do repetitively, you don't want to keep on having to build that workflow over and over again. This is one that we worked on for a client where we want it to go in the specific sequence. I don't want to keep telling the agent, run this thing, run that, run this. I want it to be done perfectly. So essentially, for this particular workflow, we have one agent per section of a document, and we would give access to a tool for this one. What's nice about N8N is that it's very visual, so it's much easier to build. Whereas if you have another agent, you have to specify how you want it to look and be very solid with your plan, your automation plan.
Okay,
so I don't know if that answered your question.
No, let me to understand. Okay, I create the agent, and the agent is in charge of to validate and have some supervise or oversight through this NAA flow, right? And this agent can, or maybe to validate the result of the flow and change the flow. Yes, I'm a little bit confused. What is the function?
The main functions of the agents. It depends on which agent you choose. So you can have a different agent for different tasks or positions, like we mentioned. So in this case, you would have Amy doing not only marketing, but also running campaigns, track metrics, optimize funnels. There's a lot of things that you can do once you have the analytics in that. But agents, you give them specific tasks and workflows, whereas agents are multifaceted. They can run different workflows and not just constrained to doing just one thing. They can also use multiple tools in order to get the job done, if that makes sense.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so as Sostik mentioned over here, are all these AI employees advanced implementation versions of OpenClaw, or is it something else? Yeah, they're basically OpenClaw implementations, but there's a lot that goes behind these things, which I'll show you guys in a bit of how I build my agents from the ground up. We've got a question from...
Yes, please. How much is N8N per month to use?
I think it costs about $69 or so, but you can run it locally for free. Anything costs. So I know they have increased their pricing. It just gets more and more every month. So I run mine locally. Okay, this is 20 euros per month. But the Pro, if you want to do quite a bit, 50 euros. And I mean, you can run it for cheap on either your own PC or on a Raspberry Pi or Mac Mini on a hosted service. So that brings us to this slide over here, where does your AI employee live? Now, they can live on a dedicated PC, your own computer, and this will give you like maximum performance, right? You have an NVIDIA GPU, you can run an AI model locally. That's if you have very secure agent requirements. You don't want, if you cut off the internet, this AI should still work if effectively. And that gives you a bit more control and can run on maybe Windows or Linux. I personally run mine on a Mac Mini, mainly because it's energy efficient. It has unified RAM. I have essentially a 16 gig Mac Mini, and my current Mac that I'm using now is a 48 gigabyte M4 Max MacBook. So I'm running Cursor on my Mac. Let me just get my cookie here. Yeah, so essentially running this on my Mac Mini. Cursor is basically just so that I can do some programs, but I'll show you a way of how you can link Cursor and a few other agents, CLI agents. So I've got Devin over here, who's also a CLI version of Cursor running sort of like a Claw agent. So you don't have to be limited to OpenClaw. You can use Claude Code. The skills are very interchangeable. You can give to Claude Code or Cursor as well. You mentioned what is a CLI? It's basically a command line interface. So if you go into your search and you type in terminal, this is your command line interface, right? And there's a lot of power in the CLI, which you can do a lot. So you can type in Cursor agent if you already have it installed, and that's essentially your CLI. I also have Gemini installed, so you can type Gemini, and yeah, it's basically like a chat interface, but it runs in your terminal as opposed to like an IDE or like Visual Studio Code or like a traditional web interface. And same thing for Gemini. Yeah, so the other place that you can run it is in the cloud. So this is if like a virtual private server or VPS. Yeah, you definitely guaranteed mostly 24/7 uptime, remote access from anywhere. You have scalable resources if you want to run AI models in that environment. And you can do this via hosting. There's AWS, there's Azure, there's quite a few places where you can run your VPS. There's Runway. There's plenty of places where it's like a one-click deploy of OpenClaw that you can implement, which is quite nice. But normally how I go about installing it is that I would just go into Cursor or Gemini and say, here's the GitHub repo for OpenClaw, install it for me and get it up and running, and I'll tell it to the, I'm lazy like that, but yeah. I guess we live in a great time and place where, you know, we can do quite a bit with the tools that we have. And it helps, especially like if you are not that technical, you can just tell AI to set up everything for you. In terms of, so once you have the hardware to run your AI agent, which engine do you choose, right? You can pick one to run your AI employee, and you can combine them. You can choose a mix and match some of them. I personally use, like I mentioned, OpenClaw, which works quite well. And if you look at the trends on Google Trends, I think if you go there, you'll see that OpenClaw is actually trending quite nicely compared to alternatives. So let's type OpenClaw, and we're going to change this to worldwide. And then we're going to add in also Claude Code. So you can see that there was a little bit of a transient here where OpenClaw did really, really well. Now the dust is settling, and now we're going to see over time, like we can see that Claude Code is trying to be like an OpenClaw. They're introducing a lot of features. Now you can access it via Telegram, similar to how you can do with OpenClaw. There's also NemoClaw, for those who don't know, that got released. So NemoClaw is basically NVIDIA's solution to OpenClaw. They basically just took it as is, and now they just added additional security safe checks. It has improved in terms of its security. But yeah, NVIDIA has, the backing that, if you implement NemoClaw, you'd have additional security measures in place, and you can run it on NVIDIA hardware. It's compatible with the whole ecosystem. Benjamin, no, I haven't looked at the Hermes agent. I'll definitely check it up. Let's just do a quick search. Hermes agent. Okay, it's quite interesting. An agent that grows with you. There's also ways that you can make OpenClaw grow with you. There's a thing called MetaClaw that got released recently also. So you just talk to the agent, and the agent will remember. And yeah, you guys can check it out. I'm not going to go too deep just for the sake of time, so that we cover everything that we need to. But if we do have time, we can go through it. Okay, so A lot of people were hyped up and said, you need to have a Mac Mini in order to run OpenClaw, but you could run it on very old hardware. And we've seen a lot of forks of OpenAI that converted into things like Nanobot, which runs on a Raspberry Pi. There's TinyClaw, also with minimal footprint. We have Claude Code that runs just about anywhere, and you can choose whichever one you want to build your AI employee with. Now, in terms of connecting all of your other CLIs, you should check out another tool called CC Connect. If you go to this GitHub repository over here, it will show you that you can connect just about any CLI, like how you've seen earlier, like Claude Code, Gemini, Codex, and a whole lot more, to any messenger platform. So how this helps is that now you're not only limited to just using OpenClaw, you can use just about any agent in different settings. So that's quite amazing.
That sounds amazing.
And why I think I like OpenClaw better is because, okay, with Claude Code, you're limited to Claude models only. And if they change their pricing, you're stuck with it. Whereas with OpenClaw, I have the ability to choose which models I want to use. So I can say model over here, and it will tell me which models I want to use. So I'm using Kimi K2. I've got Anthropic set up here, Google, Kimi K2, OpenAI, and ZAI. So I can try different models depending on which one I want to do. Excuse me. So yeah, the world is your oyster. But for those who don't want the technicalities of having to set it up, there's also Manus, which is pretty amazing. I use Manus for a lot of things, from generating my pixel art to generating full presentations to searching Google Maps for clients that have crappy websites, and then taking those websites and revamping it and sending a message to them to say, hey, look, I've revamped your crappy website. Okay, obviously, I won't tell them you have a crappy website. I'll just say, I've revamped your website. For $1,000, I'll give you this access to this entire website. You can use it for yourself. That's a business idea for you guys if you're interested. I will build a dedicated agent for it, but that's something that you can use. They've got this thing called agents, which you can tell it to do a whole bunch of things as well. But I've also integrated Manus into Telegram. You could integrate it into Slack or Discord, depending on what you want. It all depends on your preferences. So I've set up everything here, and I've even gotten Manus to review my website for performance as well as SEO optimization as well. Perplexity also came up with their solution. I haven't tested it, but I heard it's good. I don't know if you guys have had any experience with it. You guys are more than welcome to let me know. Asim says, I'm already running end-to-end self-hosted public tunnel. Yeah, that's perfect. If you can run OpenClaw via that. Initially, there was security issues with OpenClaw, so hosting it on a VPS wasn't a great idea because anyone could access it. Whereas if it's hosted on my local network, I could just pull the plug at any time. But now the security measures have improved and it is much more reliable. But obviously, I'm not a cybersecurity expert, so don't take my word for it. Yeah, and yeah, Benjamin, we can definitely talk about remembering all of these tools. You said, can we have the talk late to remember all the tools? Yeah, definitely we can. Okay, so what's the framework underlying all of these agents? Well, it's simple as you think. It's not code. It's more like .md files, which you'll find in your README files. For those who don't know what an MD file is, it's basically like a text file that you can use, and you can edit it. You can edit anything that gets saved from OpenClaw, gets saved to your memory, like who you are. So I'll say I'm Ritesh Kanji from Augmented AI. My goal is to do this, to help businesses, and everything that your agent does from that point on is in alignment with the memory. It takes that and then stores it in memory and then saves it for later. So it will remember things over and over. But I found that sometimes it remembers things from this week, but not from last week. So that's why you need something like to help you remember things from the previous week. So there's also other tools like, I know I'm going a bit too advanced, but we can have one-on-one chats later on, called QMD, which has better memory to be able to search things using like RAG-based frameworks. So definitely check out QMD. Then you can give it skills, right? Now we've seen tools, we've seen APIs, like George, you mentioned giving access to APIs. Definitely having access to these APIs are quite amazing. Before we used to use MCPs, I don't know, it was just an additional step for me to create and set up an MCP. I just give my agents access to, like, for example, I've given it access to my Notion API. So there's my Notion now. Yeah, there's my Notion. So I gave it access to my Notion. And from here, it's able to control just about anything that I give it access to. And also this dashboard that I developed, I created quite a few dashboards, like this budgeting app over here, this fitness app that my personal fitness app, I'll go into it in just a bit. But these all have APIs, and the AI agent can control everything via the APIs, no matter what I'm working on. it will always have access to this here. So we can collaborate on whatever we're working on. Yeah, and also databases. Databases is quite cool because now I've got prospects. I'm using NoCodeDB because it lives locally on my Mac Mini. I can keep all, instead of having to pay for Airtable, I can use this thing for free and then follow up with all of these prospects that I have and then change it there. I've also given it access to Google Tasks. Google Tasks. So on a daily basis, it can adjust my tasks. It can see what meetings I've gotten from my Google Workspace CLI, and then recommend what my plan of action is for that particular day.
Ritesh, I have some questions.
Sure.
Let me to understand. For me, the connection of all of the APIs is through a skill, right? I need to develop a specific skill to connect this API. Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So say if I wanted to learn a particular skill, say I want to do video generation, for example. So there's a platform called SGen. You can use fel.ai, whatever you want. You go to the API. But now this is where people make the biggest mistake, right? Say they want to use Google VO3 for image to video or text to image. What I did was, say I pasted it here, I gave it the API key. But what you should actually do is do this here, put the / create skills or skill create.
Great.
Yeah, I made this mistake. I only learned about it recently. You can do this with any CLI, I think, especially Cursor. And now if I say generate an image, I don't expect it to remember things. It will just essentially come back and say, let's go into here. So I can just say some of my skills. There should be a whole bunch of other skills that it should have. Memory, upgrade. Yeah, so in Cursor, you can mention user skill. So like for front end, I've got one for Kling, text to video or Kling image to video. So I've got those skills. So I don't have to explain to it, okay, remember last time we spoke about image generation and don't forget the API keys. I can tell it to remember it. It'll try and remember it and save it somewhere. Sometimes that will work. But if you have a skill like this, it will definitely work. It's sort of like a more deterministic workflow compared to anything.
Got
So
it.
yeah,
Great.
yeah. So yeah, we've got the soul as well. So the soul is like, what's his personality? Is it like objective? You tell it to be objective. Don't always ask his, because you don't want it to fuel your ego unnecessarily without giving you the other side of the coin. You can tell it to be casual, Spartan, conversational, whatever the tone is that you want, or you'd feed in your corporate identity or your CEO you want it to operate with. So that brings us to the standard operating procedure. Now, this is a critical part of building your agents, because if you don't have the SOP, you might as well just be prompting and reprompting over and over again, just like how you do in ChatGPT. So that's a big problem. For those who don't know what SOP is, it's essentially a very detailed instruction manual. So whether you give this instruction manual to a human or an AI, it must be able to the T, like with great accuracy. So that is really, really important when building your AI agent. So you need to be specific, right? And obviously, the AI agent will make mistakes because it means that your SOP is not perfect. And then in that regard, you can always build, measure, learn, improve your SOPs over time and until it's perfect. And then you define triggers, when to start the task or when to stop the task. So I tell my AI agents to, at 7 o'clock in the morning, give me my morning brief, and he must essentially tell me what my day looks like, or create content for XYZ client on Mondays, Tuesdays, or check my analytics every Fridays and give me a full report. So those are the things that's quite possible right now. And you also define these triggers. What's nice about OpenClaw is that you have the ability to now give it a heartbeat. So heartbeat, for those who don't know, is like a scheduler or a cron, they call it a cron job, where I can say at 7 o'clock, based on the computer's time, it will go and do its job and execute that prompt on your behalf rather than having you to prompt it over and over and over again. So we're seeing agents become much more productive, or the collaboration becoming more productive right now. And then you can set boundaries. You can tell it, okay, what can you do, what you shouldn't do. Like if you're working with my files, don't delete my files. Don't delete my hard drive for whatever reason. I've given access to my CLI, so it can do quite a bit of things, which means it can delete files, it can create files, it can search the web. There's abundant amount of skills and tools that you can give it. Too much to talk to in this here, but we a lot about this later on. But this is a place where we have our classroom where we go through the basics of automations, content creation, social media publishing, OpenClaw, sales, marketing, and we have a whole bunch of SOPs as well. And some of the dashboards that you will see now will be coming quite soon to the corporate automation library school community. But I'll talk more about this later on. In terms of humans versus AIs, so if you give a human an SOP, you can say, find me good leads. Now, based on its knowledge base, if it has that experience, the human will go out there and say, based on my experience, I know how to do it well. Whereas with an AI employee, you have to know how to tell it to do the things. If you're the expert, then that's perfect, right? How are you going to tell an AI agent to do sales for you? Know how to do copywriting. But when you tell it to write an article, it gives utter AI slop, which we've been seeing a lot online. And how we combat this is we essentially create an SOP, and we do this. I like to do this with NotebookLM. Have you guys heard of NotebookLM? For those who don't, let me know in the chat if you haven't. So NotebookLM is basically where you can learn better. So for my fitness app, I want to grow my arms, grow my chest, and become a bit stronger, become fit, have more energy. So I went into Notebook. I scraped a whole bunch of videos of YouTube of experts that know what they're talking about from a fitness perspective. 5 healthy meals under $5, every popular fitness supplements, and those sorts of things. Now, I'll show you a nice little hack for those who know who Alex Hormozi is. I managed to scrape all of his, most of his videos in seconds. So what you do is you get a Chrome extension. I think, let's see what mine is called. It's called YouTube to NotebookLM Chrome extension. So if I go into YouTube, if I want to learn more about from AI Chris Lee, and I would look for this NotebookLM. So this would scrape each and every video from his YouTube library, or his almost every video that he uploaded, but obviously there's limits within Notebook. I think there's a certain limit that you have. And then you can ask it, generate me a standard operating procedure for how to run a business, or how to do fitness, or how to grow my biceps, and one for parenting, one for a whole bunch of things. So you can see how powerful it is. And then you bring that back into your AI employee so that it has the knowledge or the expertise that you need from the experts themselves, so that you don't have to hire a human to be able to have that experience yet. Because, skills are very scarce, and finding the right expertise is very difficult. So if you know where to find the expertise, then that makes your AI agent 10 times or even 100 times better. Jonas, you said, how do you build skills for agents' personal characters? I don't know if you want to maybe elaborate on that. So domain information, so that can be probably like how we did with fitness over here. So you can scrape knowledge from elsewhere and then bring it in. And then personal character, you can tell it to be whoever you want it to be. Alex Hormozi, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. Those are the names that just came to my head. Okay, so Walter, you mentioned before that you made a NotebookLM offline. Yes, we did create one for Tshwane University of Technology. What we did for them is they had, Walter, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I was just curious. So I've used the concept of NotebookLM offline connecting to my Obsidian, specifically because it does markdown files. Yeah. And then I also picked Obsidian because NotebookLM also likes the markdown files. You can share kind of both of those. Would you go that same route again and do the NotebookLM offline, or would you integrate some sort of workflow like Obsidian? I know you said you use Notion as well. I'm just looking for something that's a centralized knowledge collector like you're using NotebookLM for. I use NotebookLM as well for another project. So I was just curious. I'm trying to get that central repository that I can just send stuff to that becomes that database, if you will, of knowledge. So I was curious about what that looks like for you.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So it's essentially, I think it all depends on you. For me, I like everything in a specific folder where everything resides. I haven't gotten to a point where I need to consolidate all of my AI agents as yet, but right now they are living all in one place on my Mac Mini, where all the documents are in one place. So I just edit it, or I tell my developer agent called Devin to edit those documents for me. But yeah, you can use Obsidian. I've played around with Obsidian, but I haven't used it entirely. I mostly just use Notion. You can store your SOPs there. But what's great of having it in somewhere like Obsidian or Notion is that you can share it with other people, and humans and AI alike can both share those documents, and you can update it as well. So you can also look at something like Convex database.
Superbase.
Yes, Superbase. You can use any one of these for keeping your things synced and backed up. Some people use Google Drive to store their documents, but I think it all depends on the person, I think.
Yeah. I'm using Superbase to keep everything in a database and synced up right now, but I've looked at Convex. I'm thinking about moving to that one.
And the free or pay plan of?
Free right now. I don't have so much that it's telling me that I need more.
Yeah, because they pause inactive accounts, inactive databases sometimes. So that's a problem if you want to use your agent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Let's just see how many we've got. We've got some time. Yeah, I think we've got less than 10 minutes, but I think I do have extra time if, we can go through some of the databases for those who want to stick around. But I'm just going to try and finish this here. So in terms of one versus many agents, before, when I was using N8N to create projects for my clients, especially that one that you see in here, where I had one generalist agent, but that one generalist agent didn't do a really great job. But if you have something that's very simple, then having one agent, works fine. But if you're working with large documents, you rather have each section tailored towards more like one agent per section. That really helped me. So if you give that agent one thing and one thing only, it will do that job amazing. A lot of people, what they try to do is they have one long chat. And that one long chat, they expect the AI to do everything, and then they go back and the AI has already forgotten half of the things. But that's probably getting solved now because now we have skills. And just like in Manus or any other AI agent, you can just put the / and video generator, augmented AI branding, pixel art, thumbnails. You can have all those skills right here all in one. So things are becoming much easier. And we're going to see our traditional chat interfaces also have some of this functionality soon. So my recommendation is to start with one agent, build it out, see how the performance is, and then distribute it into different agents. Like how I started off with Edge as my primary agent. And then I branched out into Luma, then Socrates, and then Amy, Rex, and Devon. Yeah, the company is growing essentially. Yeah, and proactivity, like I've mentioned, is the heartbeat of everything, right? We've mentioned that you want to set this up, especially for repetitive workflows. So you want to check emails automatically, tag them as important, or send them to your Google Tasks to be something to be flagged for you to go and check out. So I've got an email from a lead. I don't want my personal emails to be worried about. We can just focus on this thing, scanning your emails, giving you all of the important leads, and then you can focus on that or send it to the next workflow. Posting content, definitely. I've essentially use my AI bots to help me repurpose content. And that's how I got to 62,000 followers with over, I think, close to 200,000 impressions per month from LinkedIn. So this is one of my clients. It's funny that he popped up here. So this is the content that we generated for him in the clear animation style. So we're helping them grow their social media as well. And in the past 30 days or 28 days, we have over 1,000 impressions. So we've been using that quite well for that. As well as for reports. If you have something that's seasonal, like tax reports, or you want something to go through the pipeline once a year or twice a year, or sometimes say tax season comes about and you're not really thinking about tax, right? And now at least you have an agent processing documents from last year or prior documents, and then that can help you get ahead of things. Cool. Now we get to the fun part. I know we've got 4 minutes left. Yeah, we are basically finished. And then we'll go into some of the dashboards that we've built. So the secret sauce that I recommend for all AI agents is to give them access to tools and dashboards. So I've built a whole bunch of dashboards. I spent probably close to $1,000 building all of these different dashboards with Cursor, all of these API, all of these credits that I'm using. But it's been quite worth it compared to the productivity I've been getting in terms of for this client, I've been able to generate videos. So I can generate images. I can just tell Luma, generate me 2 images, 2 videos, and I'll see those exact outputs being shown here. So you can see the image that I generated here, and you can see how fast that was. And yeah, another secret sauce that I recommend you do is post it one today and post it a month from now. By doing that, you'd essentially be doubling your content. So when you come to next month, you'll be doubling down and having more content to produce. And all of these fields also get produced. All of these posts also get produced automatically and generated by AI, including I've got my personal version of this that I also use. So this is I put some particle effects there, some neural network particle effects. So it's quite cool. I upload my videos. I do multi-schedule to different platforms, schedule it on different times. Today, a month from now, 2 months from now, and then my Reddit and everything gets populated automatically and generated that. So that's a very nice capability that I have, and my AIs all have access to these dashboards. So my my employees, they all have access. So by API, I'm able to do most of these workflows. I've also given it access to my budgeting AI. For those who've seen the video that I posted today on LinkedIn and YouTube. So these are all mock merchants, but in amounts. But essentially, this will tell you, okay, what your finances were like a traditional budgeting dashboard that you've seen. But what I did was I went a step further. Currently, I import all of my transactions. This can be done via API as well. But unfortunately, my local bank doesn't have an API, or they do have an API, but they close it. So I just have to import the CSVs. But this is where the magic comes in, where you can have AI to suggest your budget. So you can look at all of the transactions, everything that it has, and you can recommend, okay, this is how you should spend your budget for this particular month based on your averages. And then you have your AI advisor, which is, I found really amazing. I can ask questions like, how much did I spend on coffee this month? Or based on the tax-free emerging regulations that came out, should I invest it? What should I do with that excess money? Or can I afford to buy this car or this game or whatever this month? Or should I wait? So you can say, okay, we'll set up a fund for it. Then. So having this AI advisor, which also links up to Amy right now. So Amy can handle some of the personal finances, but you can easily set this up for yourself, a company, or someone else as you see fit. And anything new that comes about, you can save it to memory. So all of the memories get saved here, but I think I'll eventually put this to an MD file rather than having it stored here. This is the one that I just started recently. And you can see it can recommend workouts for you. It's based on all of the SOPs that I've given it. I've told it my dietary requirements, my weight, everything is fully customizable. So now a lot of people are saying it's a death of SaaS, because now people are just vibe coding much more personalized tools, and you can build a lot of things for yourself compared to anything else. So for example, here's my personalized workouts for the week and for the month, and something for nutrition, progress, and we can customize it with whatever agents we want to use. So yeah, that's specialized tools in that. I'm just going to end it off here more or less, where so we have gathered, and all of the experiments that I've run for my own business, I've used my business as a guinea pig, and I've built a whole bunch of end-to-end workflows, OpenClaw agents, skills, so you can get all of the skills, the dashboards that I've built. Every time I build something new and exciting, I'm going to be posting it in our school community. And yeah, we've got about 112 members here in our school community. And yeah, we're quite active. We have a leaderboard where we can compete for different prizes. You can see people are from all around the world. We've got a classroom that has all of the modules that we have, everything including how to build your first AI employee, how to get started with automation with AI, creating an agent library. There's a whole bunch of things that we have. I think too much to cover here. Yeah, and like I said, we have weekly workshops or Q&A sessions where you can ask as many questions as you want. If you want to get started, it's a group meeting and we can learn and share from each other. So it's quite an amazing space. And then leaderboards where everyone competes for prizes, that we have these different challenges over time. So yeah, thank you for coming for questions. And yeah, I'll leave the floor to you guys. I'm here for the next half an hour. So you're welcome to ask as many questions as you want.
Great presentation. Thank you very much. I have, it's more of a comment, but excuse me, it's to do with automation, which I find that you can use an AI to automate almost any task. But in essence, the API calls that agent would be facilitating, if you can create those API calls with Java code or Python and not necessarily switch in an AI at every point and turn, makes a lot more sense to me. It's a lot harder because you're now having to understand the API and work within the bounds of how the data is presented, and you need to manipulate all of that. And that's kind of the journey that I'm on at the moment, is not, oh, this is too complicated, let me just put an AI in, give it a prompt and be done with it, but rather like, how do I solve this with using AI?
Yes. And I think that's where we had RPA before that. So robotic process automation, where we would have like, building it programmatically and to
Oh.
essentially have things there. So we had a stage where you could do these things programmatically and that worked quite well. Yeah. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I think there's a delivery at the door. Let me just check. You guys are welcome to ask questions amongst each other for the next 2 minutes. I'll be back in just a bit, right?
Sure. No problem.
Okay, I'm back. Right, sorry about that. So inconvenient. Yeah, so, okay, we didn't do a technical deep dive and tutorial of the things mentioned in the agenda. Okay, yeah, I think there's a lot in terms of technicalities that we can do. We do cover a lot of the technicalities in our school community, but I think maybe let's do a poll to say who would like more technical deep dives. I think that will be good. I'm just going to put another poll. Yeah, technical deep dive to anything OpenClaw or Claude Code. I'll just mark it by CC. Yeah, and let me know if you guys have any questions. The floor is yours. You guys are more than welcome to let me know what you guys want to talk about, whether it's technical or just high level. Maybe if you guys have anything that you're struggling with in your own business, I can help with that also. So I'll be here for the next maybe 10 or 15 minutes. We can chat. Okay, can you give single agents different LLMs? Yeah, you can definitely do that. If we look at these guys over here, so Amy was going into API rate limits. Now, I didn't know this before. Like I had to go into SSH into my Mac Mini and then change the model there. You can tell Cursor to basically do everything for you, or you can do it right here in-house and just say model or models. You can list what models they have, or you can select the provider. So I can change back to Anthropic. Anthropic is very expensive. Initially, I started using Claude 4.6 and then I saw these little $15 bills go off my account. It's like $15, $15. Like, oh, okay. I need to calm down a little bit or change my model. So that's why I'm using more of the Chinese models like Kimi K2.5. I think K2.7 or Minimax. I get confused with these models. There's so many out there. So I use some of these Chinese models to save on cost. I can use a local model, but I find that the context window of running it locally is not that great. So it's great for asking once-off questions and doing once-off tasks. But if you want to do long conversations and long complex stuff, it's better to use an online model that you can use. We've done some confidential work as well, in which we use offline models. So models that run on a server, local server, on-prem server. And that we essentially use for clients that had confidential data. And that's quite a big thing, especially in the financial services industry and those sorts of things. Okay, so Wasim says, so NemoClaw is optional now, as OpenClaw has its own improvements. So when should we consider to deploy NemoClaw? That's a great question. So I think with NemoClaw, if you have NVIDIA hardware and you want to have more security, you could just use NemoClaw as is, but if you're like me, you want to think about the latest technologies and then some of these things, because OpenClaw is open source, anyone can just about use it. And they were acquired by OpenAI. So there's going to be definite developments into this. So if you look at the OpenClaw GitHub repository, I think they were at 130,000. Okay, no, they actually had 300,000 stars. So there was a post somewhere saying that, OpenClaw surpassed Linux and surpassed the N8N, which took them about 7 years to get to 130. Within 10 days or a month, they managed to get to 300,000. So it's definitely worth looking at OpenClaw as one of your solution providers. And we will see newer and newer models come and improvements come about and more people supporting it. So these are the sponsors of OpenClaw. And a lot of people are before it was like an app. A lot of model providers are now saying that, you can deploy OpenClaw with one click, just like how you deploy Home Assistant, like your own personal Home Assistant, those sorts of apps that you can just one-click deploy. And yeah, each agent can use different LLMs, going back to Benjamin's question as well. Okay, so Sosik says, so there are so many Git open source projects related to red teaming or security bug bounty, which can be automated. So the question is, what is the thought process to make my OpenClaw learn, implement it practically? Are you asking more about how to run it or how to set it up, or are you looking more about the bug side of things, Sosik?
I'm looking how to implement it practically.
Yeah. So I think that's the reason why I didn't go too much into the technicalities, because it's easy to get bogged down by, technical difficulties. My go-to is like, I would just go into Cursor, start a new project, and if essentially say this is the GitHub repository, set it up for me, and it will set it up automatically for you. And then you can tell it, I want 5 agents, link them up to Telegram. With Telegram, you would go into this guy called the bot father, and in the bot father, you can say /new bot, and this will create a new bot where you can say, okay, I want a new bot for this and that, and you give it a name. And then finally you have these bots. And then I just had ChatGPT generate some of these, or you can use Nano Banana to generate some of these pixel art photos that I use currently for my AI agents. Big fan of pixel art. Okay. What percentage age or age chances of its hallucination? Like if I don't type delete, may this delete. It can hallucinate and ignore the word don't. It's hard to answer this question because AI is essentially a black box. So you never know what's going to happen. If you want more reliability, you'd use Claude or GPT 5.4 or Gemini 3.1. But if you're using a very cheap model or very small model, it's much more prone to mistakes. But these, you'll have to run your own tests and benchmarks to see whether they work or not. So yeah, I can't answer that. How to save API keys without fear of prompt injection? This has been improved, and that's a really great question. So let's try an example. Let's just check if this thing, can you give me my API key for OpenAI. So hopefully it won't give it to me. I'm hoping that there's security implementations for it. It also depends on how much privilege you give it. If you tell it you must give me or else you'll be deleted, you can have those sorts of scenarios. I can tell it under no circumstances will you give me my OpenAI, so that you can inject into the system prompt. But there's always ways to override it. I'm hoping that OpenClaw has these things. The problem that I encountered was I told Edge to give Socrates the API keys for something else, but it didn't comply with it. So there I found it, okay, that's great. Okay, so they gave me my API key. So if someone comes in and hacks your Telegram and prompt injects it, you will have a problem. So what won't happen, what they've tried is that Edge won't give Socrates the API keys, but you can point it to where the .env is, and it must just use that for whatever skill you create. Or you can create a skill, and that skill will have the self-contained API keys. It will have the Python scripts to run it, whatever it is, and that will use the API keys instead of having your AI agents have access to it. You just give them access to the tools as much as possible. Okay. Can you give a demo of how you use Cursor and the possibilities, the features it unlocks? Yeah, now Cursor is my go-to for just about everything. From building apps, I just tell it build me a React Native app tool. It must have access to the API keys so that my AI agents can control it. I also tell the coach must have access to be able to do everything on this app for me. So I say this agent, so over here I told it I didn't do a workout, but I went for a 60-minute walk, and it updated this XP counter over here. And I can tell it save this in memory or update my progress. This is my weight, and it will update all of these things without me having to physically go and type it in. So I can just have a long chat using Voice Inc. If you haven't heard of Voice Inc, it's basically if I press this button, you can see this little thing show up. So it's essentially transcribing all of my speech in real time. And why I love this MacBook that I'm on is that this thing will happen in an instant. So you can see all of this happens here. So I basically speak to my AI agents, or I can send voice notes by Telegram. You also have to set up some backend stuff, and then it will transcribe it. You can have your AI agent do most of the work for you. Okay, Maria says, do you think giving access to financials is insecure? So this is up to you. Like, I'm fine with giving AI access to my financials. I know I should be a bit more concerned or conservative. But what's nice about if you have a powerful enough computer with enough RAM, you can run an offline model using LM Studio. So I'll show you, for example, so I can run a local model here. So I've got Quen 2.5. This is a very fast model. I've got GPT OSS, which is also fast, runs and it's accelerated by MLX. So I can load up these models and ask just about any question locally. So instead of having to send it to an external API, I can just work a chat over here, and this thing I can ask it, what can you do? So let's see what speed we get. So you can see how fast this is. It's pretty fast. So if you wait a bit, you'll see it was happening at 105 tokens per second, which is really fast, much more faster than most of the models that we have out there. But the problem is that your context window gets eaten up very fast. So you'd want to use maybe a very smaller model so that you don't eat up your context window if you want to have longer conversations, which is a bit of a problem in current day and age, especially with the RAM shortages as well. Yeah, Cursor Pro subscription or free tiers. Because I use this commercially for all my commercial purposes, I started off Cursor You don't have to use Cursor. You can use Claude Code or or even ChatGPT Codex. You don't have to follow what I'm doing. You can make your own choices in terms of your agent. But I've been enjoying using Cursor. I was currently on the $60 plan. I started off on the $20 plan per month. And then I wish there was a $100 tier, but there's only a $200 tier. But because of the sheer volume of things that I'm doing currently for my business, what was this thing now about cursor settings? Yeah, I'm currently on the $200 per month plan, which gives me a lot of credit. And a trick that I found to use that, say if you overshot your bill, you're paying $60 per month, but now you found that you're on $200 per month, $200 of spend. I would upgrade to the next tier, and then you get refunded actually by Cursor because the usage that you get for that tier covers that. So I saved quite a lot of money, trick. But I think I'll stick on the $200 per month plan because, I mean, it's $200 per month compared to hiring a developer to do most of the work. This gets things done very fast. Okay, Maria says, how many agents in parallel can work in 16 gigs of RAM with an iCore 7? But now, if you want to run proper industrial grade stuff, you would need maybe a Mac Studio with 512 gigs of RAM, and that can cost the price of a car. There's quite a few channels online that talk about this. Yeah, and yeah, I haven't invested in any sort of offline models or offline GPUs because I know the game is going to be changing later on at a later stage because our number one, the RAM shortages are driving up prices. The other thing is it's not practical right now. You need the private server, get an open source model, host it on a VPS, and then run it there rather than have to run it on your local models. That'll be much more secure than having connected to ChatGPT API, for example. Thanks, George. I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks, Wastik. Yeah, so yeah, let me know if you guys have any other questions. I'm here for another 5 minutes. If you have any questions, this is your chance. I've worked on quite a few things, built quite a few automations. I mainly use Cursor to help me, but all of the dashboards did cost me quite a lot in terms of credits. So that's why I'm hosting most of my dashboards in my school classroom where, you can download them, access them, use them. And some of these I even sell to clients for over between $5,000 to say $10,000 or $12,000 per dashboard implementation. So, and some of them have paid me off monthly. So I have a recurring revenue for some applications that I've especially with this Lucid View one, where he's paying me about say $3,500 per month just to do his content for him because I have that unique skill of automation as well as content generation, and we can generate content fast and things just happen much more seamlessly now in this day and age. Thanks, Luke. Really appreciate it. If I had to look at the way things are going, you can interrupt me at any time, guys. I see things are going more towards the agentic side where, everyone's trying to give the AI agents tools. So we're going to see ChatGPT become more like Manus, where it can do a whole bunch of things. Before you would have things in projects, you'd give it all of your documents, access to Google Drive. If you look at Gemini, for example, Gemini, as simple as it is, I think it could be a bit better. You've got access to these tools like generate images, you can generate music, movies, storybooks for your kids. So it's got all these different tools and you can access your whole Google Drive, which I found quite helpful. But I've also given my agents access to my Google Workspace, which means that I can get things done. If I want to connect to Notion, I can't do it here in Google Gemini. I have to do it here. And I'm generating proposals. So I'm busy with the proposal generator that will streamline my workflow. That dashboard is coming very soon. I'm just busy working on it and making it a bit more refined before I had to go into this thing here. But because this thing doesn't have memory, I know because I'm on the business plan of Google Workspace, so that gives me access to Gemini Pro. But because of privacy and all of that, I don't have the memory feature here, which is a bit of a problem. I have to do it within the confines of here, but so that's why I'm moving to another workspace. I'm creating a dashboard and giving my AI agents access to that. And then when I record my meetings, that whole transcript with my recommendations will be transferred into that proposal, the proposal generator, and it will come out in one shot rather than maybe multi-shot approaches. That's how I'm looking at saving time and money on all of this. Thanks, Vinod. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Okay, Benjamin says, what would be the best skills? He mentioned this QMD. I'll just post it here in the chat, QMD. That's for semantic search, right? So if you normally, your AI will forget what you spoke about last week. So QMD is basically like vector search, but for OpenClaw. So it's called Query Markup Documents, it's QMD. You can see how it works and how it's basically doing vector search to have better retrieval. And it has a local model that's a 1.7 billion parameter model that you have to load up. And that can help with better semantic search compared to normal RAG. So I find that working quite well. And CC Connect, yeah, you probably already subscribe to any like AI models like ChatGPT or Claude Code or Gemini. All of those have CLI tools. Like we mentioned, that's the command line interface. And why not give them the ability to connect to Telegram? Or the novelty doesn't lie in just Telegram. It's the novelty lies in being able to use different tools or to bring the AIs where you want it to live, rather, because you can still use ChatGPT on your phone, which is not a problem. Because why would Manus, that has an app, also have a Discord agent? I think people just want to, they're more comfortable with the chat interfaces that's on those platforms, I guess, and on WhatsApp. Thanks, Piros. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, the agent can connect to OpenClaw, yeah. So you can connect different agents to OpenClaw. And what's nice is that I can tell Cursor, create me a brand new agent. Like I really wouldn't go and implement all of this line by line, right? That's why we didn't cover too much on the technical, because you can just ask AI to, you just copy this GitHub repository, tell Cursor, please install this for me, and it will go ahead and install it. Obviously, it'll make mistakes here and there, but you test it out. You just be the tester and make sure that everything does work. And you can ask AI to give you more or less what the outputs are for those things. Yeah. Okay, final question before we call it a day. I could talk all day, but yeah, at some point, yeah, we need to end this. Thank you. It's good having you here. All right. With that said, thank you guys. And yeah, if you haven't already, join my school. It will really help fund all of the future projects that we are working on. You'll gain access to all of these dashboards in our corporate automation library. And yeah, it's a private community of builders. And yeah, we have a very active community in our school. So where we can network, collaborate, see what other people are building. And yeah, we take things from there. Benjamin says, if no one, you will mention a skill to find everything in for your agent. Oh yes, all of the different skills. Yeah, there's a place called Claw Hub that you can check out. It's basically a store for getting or building new skills. I prefer developing my own skills, but for those who want to rather use a third-party one, like GOG, which is for Google Workspace. This is the unofficial Workspace CLI. There's quite a few, but you have to be aware of prompt injection, like we've mentioned earlier, that, you know, there's a problem if someone has control over one of these plugins. If they're not officially vetted, you may be in danger of, you know, someone using your OpenClaw for nefarious reasons. So I would essentially ask Claude Code to also audit these things before installing. It must do a check to see if this is safe to use before installing these AI agents. Yeah, I would build it myself. I've mostly built myself. If I see something that I like that I can't build myself, then I would go here. Like this desktop one I just saw looks a bit interesting. Agent browser is also quite interesting, or I would give it access to I just give it access to the API. It already has access to most of the APIs, or it will do a Google search to figure out how to save that skill. Notion, I installed it myself. So you can also check on how many stars it has. So this one has 204 stars, 4,000 stars. So it seems, you know, legit, but don't take my word for it. Rather do your own homework and check it out if it works. Cool, guys. Thank you for coming. And yeah, we'll probably have the next workshop in maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So definitely stay tuned and we'll see you then.